Great. Good afternoon, everybody. We're here for week 3 of the Atlantic Huddle, and today's topic is event sponsorship in the COVID world. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the general manager at the Rath Eastlink Community Center, and I'm also the chair of one of our partners for this initiative, Event Atlantic. Just a couple housekeeping items for the call today. If you don't mind, we'll save all of our questions for the end of the presentation, and really where this is about sharing best practice, we encourage everybody to ask questions. That's the best process for us to share our information. I know we're familiar with most of the people here on the call today, but something that may be beneficial if anybody'd like to change their name to the organization that they represent, that may help others learn from your comments and feedback a little bit more precisely. Again, this is our third initiative with Events Nova Scotia. We'll have a series every week on different topics in the event industry, but I just want to tell you a little bit about Event Atlantic and the Huddle. So Event Atlantic is a membership-based organization. We're the leading voice for event representation here in Atlantic Canada, and we know we're a relatively new organization. We're 5 years young, but we're proud that we have over 50 members that represent municipalities, venues, all stakeholders, involved with major event hosting and attraction. Also, our partner, Events Nova Scotia, we're very fortunate in our province here to have partners through the Department of Community, Culture and Heritage. They're here to help communities develop, adapt, and create events while facing the challenges posed by COVID-19. Their work's guided by the Nova Scotia Event Strategy, launched in 2018, and it's the first of its kind here in Nova Scotia. The Nova Scotia Event Strategy focuses on the development, attraction, and funding of events through a variety of key pillars. So really, if anybody in the province is thinking about creating, attracting, or bidding on a major event, Events Nova Scotia is here to help. I'll introduce our presenter today. Joining us from BC is Brent Barutis. Brent has spent over 30 years in the sponsorship marketing industry, developing and delivering profitable sponsorship programs that result in strong ROIs for properties, rights holders, and sponsors. So as president and CEO of the Partnership Group Sponsorship Specialists, he leads a dedicated team of professionals and delivering measurable results for their clients. Brent has literally worked the street, selling sport and event as a charitable sponsorships for over a decade, as well as having expertise on the buying side. So since founding the Partnership Group in 2001, Brent has provided his expertise to all sectors of the industry as a sponsorship leader and pioneer in Canada. I'll turn it over to Brent with his presentation.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everybody, for having me. I am just going to request, there we go. See, Caitlin, I remembered eventually that I had to do that. I am just going to move this back. Yeah. I'm just trying to get the pages to move.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. So, thanks very much. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Matt, for the introduction, and thanks, everybody, for being here. Looks like a great turnout. So, I just a couple little other background things. As Matt mentioned, I've been in the business over 30 years. Partnership Group's in its 20th year of operation, and we work in consulting services to events, not-for-profits, charities, municipalities, anybody that's in the sponsorship business, and to help them to, as well as on the brand side, to help them to actually deliver their better ROI. As Matt also mentioned, I am based out of Victoria, or out of Vancouver Island, and in Nanaimo. Our company's based out of Calgary, but we do a lot of work. Some of you might have heard of us. We have done work in New Brunswick, with New Brunswick Recreation. We've done work for Sport New Brunswick. We've done work for Event Atlantic Group, having spoken at a couple of your events in the past. So we're pretty familiar on that. If there's anything that anybody has questions afterwards that don't get answered, that is my contact stuff. Email's the best one for me. I am on LinkedIn quite a bit. I do follow and post some stuff on Twitter. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll find that I basically don't post anything. I'm there because my daughter's hockey team requires that I be on Instagram. So that's the way that works. Also, I welcome or invite any of you that want to sign up. I do a blog every week, every Tuesday morning. Comes out called the really creative, called the Tuesday Morning Commentary, and that's available for free. And if you just send me an email or send me go right through the website, we can get you linked up on that. I will just warn you, it is usually a 2-3 minute read. Sometimes it's a little longer. 95% of the time it's on sponsorship or sales or relationships or something to do with our sector around events, those types of things. But about 5% of the time it's a platform for me to basically rant about something like Starbucks changing the supplier of their tea and how much that bothered me, or something like that that's really pertinent to everybody else. And I digress. But I'm going to look today at really trying to cover a couple of things. Number one, do a general overview. We're going to look at the 6 steps to sponsorship success during the COVID world. Then we're going to look at what else is critical, your feedback, that sort of stuff. I'm just going to see if I'm going to just turn off my video for the time being. And then also we're going to look at number 4. There will be time for questions, but it's not moving. I'm not sure why. So I'm not able to move my slides. There we go. So let's try this again. There we go. So, and then we'll go into questions and discussion. What we're going to look at in that general overview is what I call the sort of the 3 stages of the pandemic world and how they've reacted. But first, what you need to understand, and this isn't news to anybody that's on this session, is that the world has changed. The game has changed. Your game's going to change again. I know in Nova Scotia, as Matt was mentioning, for larger groups, outdoor groups, indoor groups, that's going to happen. Other parts of Atlantic Canada, it's going to happen. But there's some things you need to understand. And that's the fact that probably about 25% of the businesses that used to support your events are no longer going to support your events. They're probably not even going to be around. So it's understanding that the people that you relied on are not going to be there. 1 in 4 are not going to exist. 1 in 4 are not going to be able to support you. And some of those, another 1 in 4, are still around, but they're struggling. So it's basically 1 in 2 of the organizations that you used to have that will actually be able to continue. That means whether you're running an event in Fredericton or Summerside or Sydney or Moncton, it doesn't matter, that 2 in the 4 are not, or 50% of the people are not going to be able to help you. So you've got to look to where you can continue to get sponsorship. And that's probably going to come from the stronger local businesses that have survived, as well as regional. But continually, Atlantic Canada has not been really strong at getting national dollars for things, and that's just a reality of it. Same as what you would find in the prairies in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and to some extent on the west coast, or the left coast, on Vancouver Island compared to the lower mainland. So when we stop to look at that, as I said, there's really 3 stages to the pandemic from a sponsorship perspective. And I want to go into each of these. And the first one is, what can or should you have been doing already? And that reality is that you should have been keeping in touch. And I know hindsight's 2020, but it doesn't mean you can't do this starting now if you have not been doing it up to this point. And that's the fact that it's staying in touch with your sponsors. It's going to those organizations and understanding what they're going through. You already know life is like for you and your event or your organization. But it's time to look at it and say, do I really understand what my partner, that small restaurant, that local retail business, that chartered accountant firm, I don't care what they are, but those sponsors that you had, how are they doing right now? What is their business like? What is their reaction? And being able to understand those organizations and see where we can help through the history of what's going on. The second stage is really planning and preparing for the future. And that's about continually working with those partners and offering them, perhaps we make decisions that, you know, you will let you be a sponsor. You have been there for the last 10 years and you have no money. So do we ditch them? Do we not let them on board, or do we actually let them still be there on the plan and hope that in another next year when we do this event again, that they will continue to be there? Can they work in a digital world compared to a live world? And we're going to look at that. And really the third stage is about what can you do in the new norm. And that's what we're going to look at for the rest of the session. And my plan is to really look at these 6 steps to success in this new world and the new norm that we're running into. And then we've got time for questions and answers at the end. So these are what I call the 6 steps, and I'm going to go into each one of them, but it's understand that things are different, understand that what you've always done is no longer acceptable. You need to create an environment of safety and security. Virtual and digital are critical in this new world. Communication is essential, and storytelling is critical. So those are sort of the 6 steps. First of all, let's understand that things are different. We've gone virtual. I might dare to ask, prior to 2 weeks ago, when was the last time that Event Atlantic actually ran a series of virtual workshops and seminars? Probably this wasn't a mainstay of the planning. This was, you know, from all my experience in the past, it's always been once a year or twice a year, getting those meetings, getting those groups together and delivering a series of workshops, delivering all that. Well, when we look at Bauer here, they're no longer during the height of the pandemic in the first wave, because I know we're in the second already, but it was truly about making goalie masks, and now it's making PPE. So that's changed, and understanding that those things are different, understanding that we've gone virtual, and it may be a time before live large concert events come back, or live events even come back, period. We have to start being innovative and understanding that things are different. We need to look at that things probably will never be the same. And these are all things that we have to accept before we can really understand how we're going to do sponsorship in this new world. I like to look at the universities as an example, the post-secondary institutions, because so many of them around the world, and especially in Canada, and especially in Atlantic Canada, every year the organizations would say, we need a university, or post-secondary would say, we need money this coming year so that we can put all of our curriculum online, so that we can do everything online. And every year for the last decade, budget decision makers were saying, sorry, don't have any money for that. Sorry, we'll have to wait till next year before we do virtual teaching and put curriculum online. And somehow between the 15th of March and the end of April, every post-secondary institution just about in Canada found money to produce a curriculum online, in the same way that we're doing it right now with events. I know a lot of people who said they would never run a virtual event. Now they have no choice but to run a virtual event. So that's what's changed. And when we look at it, that the virtual scenario is not going to go away. Just like after 9/11, security at airports did not go away after a couple of years. It's part of the new norm. And when we start looking at it, the way we're going to be hosting these events is going to be different. The way we're going to be checking in and out of hotels is going to be different. The way we operate at functions is going to be different. And we also need to understand that costs are going to go up. So if you think that the new norm is just going to be the old norm, think again, because the phrase "we have always done it that way" are the 7 most expensive words in the business in the world of business. And so I encourage you to take those 7 words and throw them away, because the way you used to do things is basically unacceptable. What you have always done and that way in the world of sponsorship is unacceptable. What we have to look at is that the way we sampled, handing out product or letting people play and be engaged one-on-one with caricatures or activities or hosting opportunities, those are all going to go by the wayside. There's no virtual reality that, I'm going to take off my headset and put it back on into the next person in line so that they can take shots at a virtual golf or whatever it is. That's not going to happen. We have to find another way of doing it. The way that our guests check into hotels isn't going to be going to the front desk. It's all going to be on our phone. Our phone is also going to be our key to our room. Those are the things that are going to change. And how do we adjust to that? And how does that integrate in with our sponsorship opportunities? So putting up banners. So banners may become more important right now, because it used to be at a lot of these events, they weren't televised. But live streaming is going to become so important now. So, and the capability to live stream is there. It's just nobody wanted to go there, or it was too expensive. Well, guess what? Now signage isn't just the 400 people at your event. If you're live streaming this, it could be 4,000 people. So those are the things that you need to start to look at. When we take a look at the upcoming PEI Canada Games, the next Canada Games after Niagara, when we start to look at that, what are they going to be doing? How are they going to be managing seats? How are they going to be cleaning between seats and between activities that go on? How are they going to be sanitized? How is the equipment, the bats, the balls, how is that all going to be sanitized? And I know this seems like it's years away. It's, still 3 years away, but I don't see a big change in sanitization. The cleanliness that we're living today is going to continue. So how do your sponsors get integrated into that? Because you never wiped off seats before and after a performance, a ball game. So if it's benches and bleachers that are there, have you built in the understanding that, those all need to be cleaned after one group of people leave and the next group of people come back in? So if they all have to be cleaned, how can sponsors be integrated in that? Is it they're paying for it, or the perception that they're making a clean and sanitized scenario for you? When you start to look at an athlete's village, or you start to look at those types of things, how is the sponsor going to be integrated into those new scenarios? So when we stop to look at all that, number 3 is this creation of a safe environment. You can create the safest environment in the world, the cleanest environment in the world. But if you don't let the audiences know, then you're not going to get people showing up. They have to feel safe and secure. And that goes for your sponsors too. The last thing in the world that your sponsor wants to do is sponsor your live event that's coming up, and then there's a outbreak of a pandemic of COVID as a result of that event that you're hosting because there wasn't enough cleanliness. That sponsor is now gun shy. They're not actually coming back to your event or anybody else's event for a really long time. So you not only have to create the appearance of being safe and sanitary, you have to be safe and sanitary. Otherwise, your sponsors aren't going to come on board. So when they say we want to activate, how can you show them a safe way to activate? When they tell you that they're concerned about the guests that are coming to this event, how are you going to get them to understand that it is a safe and secure environment? Because you have to convince them first before they will give you money so that you can run the event. So the studies have also shown that historical things like showing crowded areas, concerts with people next to each other, none of that can appear. It has to be concerts that are showing boxed areas and circles for people to stand on. Those are the things that people need to see in images. The fourth thing is, as I said, is virtual and digital are critical. We've shifted into this world. It's not going to shift out of it. You're going to end up running parallel, or you're going to run virtual only, but even your live events are going to have a virtual component to them if you want to be successful. PricewaterhouseCoopers shows that the fan experience from specifically a sporting event, so not events as a whole, but sports specifically, tops the opportunity for sponsors. That enhanced digital media experience is number one for them. Sponsors want to be integrated into a digital and virtual world. So if you're not doing that, they're not interested. The second highest is moving from the digital media side into the monetization of digital. So how can I, as a sponsor, not only integrate into your digital and virtual side of your live event or your virtual event, but how can I monetize on that? How can I make money from that? And the third area that this study just came out last week from PwC is that ranks at 72%. So the third one is that sponsorship rights have to be flexible. So you need to start looking at, just because you have a contract that says you're going to give them the following, that may change in 2 weeks' time, 6 weeks' time, or 8 weeks' time, or next year. The flexibility in your agreement is going to be a nightmare for lawyers. But the reality is, this is going to be, if you're not flexible, it's not going to happen. And so you need to start looking. So what does all this mean? It means that digital and virtual are going to be your mainstay. You're going to have a live event with concert. You're going to have a live event with a festival. You're going to have a live event with a sporting event. Those are all given. Eventually, they're coming back and they're going to happen. But there's going to be virtual and digital components to it, or you won't be successful, as I said. So you have to start looking at second and third screens. So if I look at something like the Harvest Jazz and Blues Festival, when it's running and it's operating, it used to be that I would sit there and I would watch the performance, and that was the end of it. Well, ultimately, that festival is going virtual to start with, and maybe next year or the year after, don't hold me to it, that will be a live event again, or it may already be a live event. And the end result is that once it goes back to live, the virtual side still needs to be there. And you need to be able to broadcast that, whether it's live streaming or whether it's with a broadcast partner, because they've set these expectations. And that is a place you can make money from. You can sell it online as well as ticket it at the gate. But what then happens is, how do you engage that audience that's virtually online? And how do you also engage the people that are live there with their phone? So I can watch the concert, but I can also watch an interview with that musician, or I can have a behind stage. I could be on 3 screens if I'm sitting in my home at the Harvest Jazz and Blues Festival, or if I'm live, I'm on my phone as well. I want to have that second screen. I've got the live and I've got a screen. How can I be interacting with sponsors and with that audience? And this is something that can make a huge difference. And if you've already experienced this, and you're running a a virtual festival right now, or a virtual concert, this allows you to have a ton of interaction with the performers. They can be on a second screen talking to your people, to your audiences, live in breakout rooms and opportunities. These are all things you could never have, and every one of them is sponsorable. So that social side also becomes critical, that we need to be looking at the social side and how are we sharing online while we're live, not something just used as a push medium to get people to come to the event, but actually social engagement. Half of your activity online and social should be not from you pushing out product and pushing out messages. It should be from the audience themselves. So these are all opportunities that you can do. You can also use you can use virtual reality and running events, but you can also use artificial intelligence, and you can use AI and virtual reality, use VR to create really unique opportunities. So what if you have a sponsor like Nova Pizza or something, and they've got branches all over Atlantic Canada. And in doing so, they've got the opportunity to be able to be a sponsor. And what you want to do is have people come and take your mascot or your logo and through virtual reality superimpose that on a selfie that's in front of their pizza place when you're picking up pizza. And now it becomes a scavenger hunt. How many Nova Pizzas can you go to in the next 2 months through this sponsorship to be able to win tickets to next year's concert or next week's live hockey event or whatever it is? These are the types of things that we never did before, but they're in our backyard. They're available today, and those are the things that can drive traffic to your sponsors, generate, monetize for them, and also build an opportunity for you to have a virtual reality platform or an IR platform or an artificial intelligence platform to be able to monetize for you and the sponsor. Number 5 in this 6 steps is communication is essential. And that communication, no offense, but most events, and not just Atlantic Canada, but everywhere, are really lousy communicators. What we do with our sponsors is we talk to them when we need money, we send them a fulfillment report, we put them on the same spam lists that we do the general public. But we need to be talking to our partners way more than before. We need to be keeping in touch with them because their world is going to change day by day. Your world is going to change day by day, week by week. And so the communication element needs to be way more interactive. And that's not pitching and asking them for money all the time. It's understanding what's changed in their business, what's changed in their world. And I just look at, as Matt, you mentioned, you're going to be opening up in Nova Scotia probably to some new opportunities. Larger numbers have been approved. And then I look, not so much in your backyard, but in the backyard around Toronto and everything that's been closed down and what's happening in Ontario. So how does that affect the sponsor? And how are we going to, as a event, realign with them? But that requires the immediate communication. Most of us grew up on the belief that ABC stood for always be closing. Well, ABC stands for always be communicating. That is part of this new norm. And that means that we need to inform our partners both ways on a regular basis. And if that means you're talking to your partners once a day, every day for the next 6 months, so be it. Maybe it's once a week. Maybe it's twice a month. I don't know what it is, but relationships are going to be a lot deeper today because those brands have less money to spend. And the people that they have the deepest relationship with that can deliver the best return on investment is where they're going to spend their money. So if they don't have trust in you, you're in trouble. And trust is built based on relationships, and relationships are built on communication. And finally, the last step is that you need to be talking about storytelling. It's critical. This means moving away from talking about, hey, we've got the following protocols in place for security or for sanitation or whatever it is. Instead of giving them data, and this is what so many events and so much sport and so much tourism does, they push data out. This is all about, we've got this many people we can allow, this many, this is what we're doing in sanitation, this is how we're prepared based on protocols. Stop talking about data and start talking about, here's how we're making sure you're safe. We're going to ensure that you've always got space in between. Start telling stories instead of imploding with data, because people want to feel comfortable, and they feel comfortable when they get told a story and a history and a content, and the creative is there and the experience is talked about, and it brings through emotion. So we need to shift from formulating and sending out data. And I talked to this, I talked about this with Sport Tourism Canada, and that one of the big things is that shift needs to be away from talking about convincing people about the economic impact of tourism when you're, as Matt, you said, inviting or looking to bring in a new major event, a sport tourism event or any event at all. And we always go back and say, here's the economic impact. Well, you know what? The common person walking down the street in Moncton or Halifax or Charlottetown, they don't relate to economic impact. They relate to hosting the games in Prince Edward Island means we're getting a new pool. Let's talk about somebody whose kid made it to the Olympics because of the pool that was built 40 years ago because it was a sporting event in this community. Or the fact that this person is producing records today because they had an opportunity at the Celtic Festival in Sydney and in Cape Breton to perform on stage because that event happened. These are the stories that we need to tell. We need to tell them about our sponsors and about our events. That's the biggest shift that we're going to have from that side or from that area. So that would take me, I'm ready to, however you want to open this up. I've got a slide that says, are there any other key areas that involve sponsorship that should be addressed? This slide, and then I can come back to it. But these are questions that I thought you might have, and maybe I've answered them, but maybe not. And these might open up the door for us to get into a discussion. And that's questions like, will my sponsors be back? Are they going to hang around till I'm back as a live event? Maybe, maybe not. Are they going to hang around to my virtual event? What can I be doing right now? Will sponsorship exist in the future? When will live events return, and what will it look like, and what does the new norm look like? So that's sort of where I am. I can go to the next slide, which is really just says, the same as this one. What other key areas, or go into questions and discussion. I'm going to, Caitlin, I'm going to turn that back to you, and you can control this from this point on, if that's okay.
Brent, that was a great presentation. It was very thought-provoking, and I can kick off the question period for you if you don't mind. I'm just curious to hear from you and your perspectives, because I know a lot of the success that you've had with Partnership Group was finding that common middle ground between the representation of the asset and the corporate partner, and doing valuations for items, assets such as title sponsorship. And I'm just curious your thought perspectives as we transition into this COVID and post-COVID world of the valuations of traditional forms of sponsorship, like the title sponsorship and naming rights, as compared to virtual components.
And Matt, it's a great question. And this one I'm glad you asked, because it's easy for me to answer. We've just spent, between this week and last week, probably a total of 6 to 8 hours with clients, existing clients, who are asking that exact question. The valuation you did for us, how does it stand up today? And how will it stand up tomorrow? And, or if, we're going to do a valuation, why would we do one in the middle of COVID? So the biggest thing to understand is that this pandemic, it's not going to last. It's not going to last forever. It could last for, at the height that we're at in first wave and second wave and going into third wave, everything that we're seeing from IMI and others, we're not going to return to any sort of normal until probably June or July or August of next year. That's when, we may have a vaccine and things may adjust, but then it's probably another year after that before we start to resume to see airlines getting back to the levels that they might have been at, the number of people that are coming to your live events, reaching those limits again that they may have had in 2019 or 2018, those sorts of things. So it's going to take time for us to get there. But what we need to look at is that the naming of a facility, if you're looking at an event such as the PEI Games, or you're looking at a naming right of a program, or you're looking at a naming right of a festival, you have to look at long term. And that's a period of, say, if somebody already had a naming right and it's 10 years and it went from 2017 to 2027, there's a dip in the middle, but by 2023, 24, 25, your numbers are going to be back. So what we're telling all our clients is, if you have existing valuations, those valuations are fine, because nobody is looking. If there is somebody that's looking corporately at a naming rate for a sponsorship and they're not looking beyond a year, they've got bigger problems to worry about than what the value of that asset is worth. So if they're looking at a 5-year naming right or a 10-year naming right, then it will balance out. So typically the valuation that we or our competitors would deliver for anybody, those valuations are good for anywhere between 10 to 15 years on average. There are exceptions to that rule. I mean, if all of a sudden your event went, the number of people through the gate to your event is 10 times over 3 years. Well, yeah, your value's higher. So, but you don't have to hire us to redo it. Yeah, I would, if I was you, I'd be looking and saying, we have 10 times the number of people now. You know what? Probably 8 times the value or 6 times the value. Those types of things, until you want to pay to get it done again. COVID, the effect of COVID is short term. I know it seems long when we start to look at it from a 3-year perspective, but 3 years in the life of a 100-year event is 3%. 3 years in the life of a 50-year event is 6%. So it's not as big and impactful as you think. So how do we look at those valuations? Yeah, you may want to adjust them. I wouldn't be adjusting any valuations. What I would be looking for we're advising our corporate clients to do is to make good. So if I'm paying $25,000 for a naming right of a music festival in Atlantic Canada right now, I will continue to pay $25,000, but I know your numbers are down. We're not seeing the same numbers virtually. When it comes back live, they're not going to be there. I'm willing to pay, and in most cases, this is what we're seeing. We're willing to continue to pay what that previously valued price was, but we need to have more value given to us. So that might mean we need to have, we're going to stretch this out. Instead of it being 5 more years, it's going to be 7 years. And you're going to give it to us for 7 years, and we're only paying $25,000 a year for 5 more years. So that might be the valuation upgrade. The valuation upgrade might be more assets. And when you start to look at a digital world, there's a whole lot more assets. And if they're going to get both virtual and on-site assets in 2022 and not pay anything more than $25,000, they're getting better value. So what we're seeing on both sides is this comes back to that need to communicate, the need to be working with your partners. It's about coming to a mutual understanding and flexibility of what you're going to do rather than changing the values themselves. Would I love to redo everybody's valuations? Absolutely. I could put my kid through college then, but the reality is that we're recommending to most clients, don't hire us to do it all over again just because of COVID. So does that answer it, Matt, or is that where you wanted to go?
That's perfect. You hit the nail on the head.
Cool.
Any other
Mr.
questions?
Brody,
I see Seamus is here.
Out here on the left coast. Question for you. Can you hear
Sorry,
me?
what was that, Seamus, about the left? Yeah, I can hear you now on the left
Question.
coast. Yeah.
You talked about creating an environment of a safe environment for both patrons and sponsors and anybody coming to your event. Should you now be talking about that safe environment when you're pitching a sponsorship? If you're proposing, if you don't get the due diligence or if you don't have a chance to meet somebody in a cold call, but should that reference be now implemented or integrated into your pitch deck? Talk about what you're doing.
I would say absolutely. And in our experience, there is no excuse for not being able to get a meeting, virtual or otherwise. I mean, we know this lady that sells for small events in Alberta, and from March through September, she was averaging 4 to 5 cold calls a week. Like, first discovery meetings. She was persistent. She knows, she pushes, and she's young and she's doing this work. So it's not like she has a Rolodex that's huge. These are cold calls. So number one is I wouldn't be pitching anybody anything without at least having one discovery session. And the answer to your question, Seamus, is yes, it should be, you need to be telling the story of what you're doing for safe and security prior to pitching. And then your deck should show clearly why they should feel secure without having to tell them, without saying, we will make you feel comfortable. You want them to look at your deck and go, this is where I want to be. Look at the safeness that they've done in securing physical distancing. Look at what they've told us about that they're doing from a sanitation perspective. These are the things that make that sponsor feel comfortable. And if they're comfortable, then they will give you the money. But if they're not comfortable, they're not giving the money. They don't want to be the sponsor that made this event happen and 12 people died.
Just as a quick follow-up to that, Brent, is there a concern that if you were to buy into that and say you were the official sanitized sponsor, or Coca-Cola, cleans these seats for you, if in the COVID world there's an outbreak or a cluster, are you concerned about being tarred with that feather or that brush? Sorry.
Absolutely.
You do not want to be known as the Coca-Cola cluster. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, really good question, Seamus. It is a double-edged sword. I mean, let's take a look at another product. Airlines do not sponsor Formula One racing or any type of motor racing for a really good reason. People crash, and airlines do not want to be associated with crashes. So they don't name an airline that's ever sponsored a Formula One. It just doesn't happen. So the same thing, that same fear will exist. You are absolutely right. Coca-Cola, we want to be the sanitation sponsor, but I think it goes beyond that. They don't want to be a sponsor, period, if there's an outbreak. But whether they're the sanitation sponsor or they're just part of this event, the sanitation sponsor, you're right, would have them eating more of the blame. But the scenario is this: you need to have a plan, a communications plan. And this is something we've always failed to do in the past. Sure, we may have a plan if there's a windstorm that knocks down our stages, or but we don't have a pandemic plan. We don't have a communications plan that says, if somebody dies as a result of us having a live event, or there is an outbreak because of our live event, what are we going to do about it? Well, you need to have that in place so that you can be on a stage with Coca-Cola to say, here's where we stand today. This is the announcement. There's 12 people that were at our event that are presently have been diagnosed with COVID-19. Here's what we did leading up to it. Here's what we're doing now. Here's what we look to do in the future. And Coca-Cola is on that stage with that event talking about this. But you have to have that plan in place and ready to go, because it won't be a literal stage, it will be a virtual stage. Does that answer the question, Seamus?
Yeah, thank you. Communication.
Brent, we have a group message here from Kim Doyle. Kim's asking what everyone's hearing about any changes in insurance requirements from sponsors. And that's probably a good segue into our next discussion next week regarding insurance for our event stakeholders. But certainly while we have you here, if you have any comments you could offer the group, or if anybody else on the call today could let us know what their experience has been to date.
So I'll go first, and then I'll open it up, because we have not seen a lot of this. We've had a couple of questions around insurance and the requirements, but nothing that I could give a really strong, this is where you need to be or what you need to do as a sponsor or to deal with your sponsors. But here's two other things. Number one, I would encourage everybody to attend next week to session number 4, because it's focusing on that. But it's interesting when we look, and this is outside of Atlantic Canada, but if you've ever heard of the Shaw Festival, it's ironic, but 3 years ago, their executive director, their CEO convinced the board that they need to be taking out pandemic insurance. And they took out pandemic insurance. Every one of their employees is still employed. They're still doing productions, smaller scale, indoor, outdoor, all that sort of stuff. But they have all the money they need because they took insurance. And I think what we're going to see is that it's not just insurance. Sponsors aren't going to just want to know about insurance of traditional and health-wise and security-wise and all of those sorts of things. But what about pandemic outbreaks? And what about lawsuits? What about lawsuits for loss of life as a result of that event not having done what they needed to do to make everybody safe? So that's where I'll leave that, but I'd love to hear from anybody else on the call that's got some feedback or thoughts or that they're hearing on the street.
Great. Next week
Means everybody better be at that session next week.
Yeah, I'll just do a quick promo for next week since we're on the topic, and essentially we're hoping to take the worry out of event insurance for our stakeholders here. We'll be joined by Tyler McLaren from Marsh Canada. He'll discuss the emerging trends and what events need to be considered moving forward when it comes to insurance. That is next Wednesday, October 28th at 2 p.m. And Stephanie did just send out the registration link in the group chat, so it should be there. Hopefully Tyler can shed some more light on that topic. I know we're running a bit out of time here. Any other questions for Brent? I do appreciate, Brent, you joining us today and sharing your insight. I always look forward to your presentations at Sport Tourism Canada. Look forward to hearing from you again soon with the Sport Event Exchange in the new year. Also want to give a nice shout out to some of our partners here and the relationship that we've established with Events Nova Scotia. Essentially, we recognize that many hospitality partners have been going through some tough times as a result of COVID-19. So after each webinar, we draw a name from all of the participants on the call today for an opportunity to win a gift card to a local restaurant in your area. And the winner will notify via email. We encourage you to support local whenever you can. And Brent's selection for the gift card purchase has, I guess it's been Brent's favorite as he comes to the Maritimes. It's the Chess Piece Patisserie in Fredericton. Did I say that right? I'll have to explore that one, Brent.
Yeah.
And last, from week one, Sherry has selected the Moco Downtown establishment, also in Fredericton, I believe. So we'll be sure to be in touch with regards to the recipients for those gift cards, and appreciate everybody tuning in today. And we'll look forward to seeing you all again next week to chat a little bit more about insurance. Take care, guys.
Great. Thanks, everybody.